Mysterious monster skeleton. A mysterious sea monster recently washed up on a British beach, prompting the public to ask, do sea monsters really exist? The truth is that sea monsters definitely exist. The ocean is still mostly unexplored. Scientists and fishermen are constantly finding new species. So who knows what else is lurking beneath the water, covering most of our planet? A woman named Margaret Flippins was the one who stumbled upon the skeleton of this particular unknown creature while she was strolling along her favorite beach near the city of Aberdeen. The experts can't quite figure out what the creature is, or at least what it was in life. It's been estimated at 30 feet long, and it looks more like a dangerous sea serpent than any living animal we know anything about. The best guess that scientists can come up with is that the carcass belonged to a whale. That's it, just an ordinary whale. But there's no proof of this, or indeed proof that the monster will ever be certifiably identified. Many experts have come forward to say that it's perfectly plausible for some species of shark, whale, or other beast to be living in the ocean that we don't yet know about. The beached carcass may just be one of them.
Sea serpent skeleton. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water in eastern France, a horrifying creature appears. Just off the shore of the Loire River in France, a terrifying discovery has stunned locals and made tourists flock to the area to see the phenomena. The skeleton of a 435-foot sea serpent rises from the water near the Bay of Biscay. The stunning feature lurks beneath the surface at high tide, but when the waters recede, it surfaces on the beach. From a distance, the body of the creature mimics the curved shape of the nearby Saint Nazaire Bridge, but up close, visitors are shocked by the animal's size and the massive fangs jutting from its open jaw. Just in case you thought some prehistoric creature had risen from the depths, you can breathe a little easier knowing the skeleton is actually the handiwork of a Chinese artist. Wang Yongping created a breathtaking sculpture, one that depicts one of the most well-known symbols in Chinese mythology. Serpents are found in multiple legends and folktales, with the animal sometimes having shape-shifting abilities or magical powers. With the changing tide, the sculpture changes too, and as moss, riverfish, algae, and other plants start to grow and collect around the snake, Wang Yongping's magnificent creation will also change along with it. In Chinese folklore, snakes are called small dragons. They're often found in totems from the Tujia ethnic group that lives in the Sichuan and Hunan provinces. Snakes were also found in tattoos of the ancient people who lived in what is now the Fujian province. Even though the art world has embraced Wang Yongping's art, his own government didn't share the same feelings. His involvement in the Chinese avant-garde movement in the 1980s resulted in a lot of his work being banned. After moving to France, he continued to explore in his work, combining art with themes of identity and culture. His snake, the serpent d'océan, has a whip-like tail that is both vicious and graceful. It has made the snake a statement piece that has drawn thousands of tourists to the shores of the Loire River since it was installed in 2012. Sir Bruce Ingham. Imagine your friend has arrived back from a trip abroad and he's brought you a gift. Aw, how considerate. But wait, what the hell is he handing over? Actually, handing over is about right, because the present is an actual hand. This was the bizarre situation that Sir Bruce Ingham found himself in when his friend Howard Carter gave him a mummified appendage. Carter was the famous archaeologist who in 1922 took a peek inside the Egyptian tomb of Tutankhamun. This notable pharaoh had been sealed away in a Valley of the King's burial chamber and may well have thought that he'd stay that way for all eternity. The British, however, had other plans, though they came to regret their arguably unwise move. It's said a curse was placed on the men who entered the tomb that year. The terrible affliction followed them and apparently killed some of them, which is the subject of this video and what you want to hear about, right? How does Sir Bruce Ingham fit into all of this? We'll tell you. He didn't die or anything. We didn't want to go straight into the grim stuff, but some pretty weird stuff happened after he received the hand, which was intended to be used as a paperweight. Yeah, you heard that right. For starters, the bracelet in the hand, yes, it was all blinged up, carried a message. This reportedly read, "Cursed be he who moves my body. To him shall come fire, water, and pestilence." It didn't say anything about stopping documents from blowing off your desk. Either way, Sir Bruce Ingham wouldn't have a desk for much longer, as his house would go on to be consumed by fire. And if you think that sounds like a bad coincidence, wait till you hear what happened next. He had the house rebuilt, and then it was flooded. At that point, Ingham decided to ditch the paperweight before things got worse. Good plan.
Butterfly creatures. Hordes of little sea monsters recently washed up on beaches all across Dubai. So many of them were found scattered across the local beaches that residents began to get worried. The Dubai municipality had to release a statement saying that the small monsters, which looked kind of like ocean butterflies, were completely harmless and not venomous. But even though these little creatures weren't deadly, they were extremely odd-looking. These marine animals belong to a family of sea butterflies, a subfamily of sea snails. Each one is less than a couple inches in length, with the body of the sea butterfly protected by a shell shaped like a needle. Unfortunately for them, they almost always die when they get swept onto dry sand. And even though they can't kill anyone, they do cause mild discomfort when they get stuck to people's bodies. But the biggest mystery that still hasn't been solved to this day is just why they wound up on so many beaches. They were spotted in 5 different places in huge clusters. Scientists have no idea what happened for so many of them to be washed ashore at once. Do you have any ideas?
Walking shark. Seeing isn't always believing when it comes to online videos, so when a footage of a shark species that a biologist shared seemed to show the creature walking on land, it's no surprise that many viewers thought it was a hoax. But the animal found in the tide pool of the Papua New Guinea coast in 2022 not only set the internet abuzz, it was very much real. The species known as the epaulet does really have the ability to walk on land. This remarkable shark is found all along the northern and southern coast of Australia and have evolved the ability to walk in their search for food in areas where other sharks couldn't. A shallow water shark, they like to eat crabs and other invertebrates, using the coral reefs as a type of step stool to climb up and get to the next tide pool. Conservationists were understandably determined to figure out how the sharks were able to walk. Their curiosity paid off when they captured the footage showing the shark using its pectoral and pelvis fins to scuttle along the ocean floor looking for crustaceans under rocks and coral. Using genetic samples from shark fin clippings, they were able to pinpoint the time when the sharks branched off into a new species. Sharks have been around for about 400 million years, 200 million longer than dinosaurs, but the species of walking sharks are one of the youngest sharks on Earth, only evolving within the last 9 million years. In 2016, there were 9 species of walking shark found exclusively in northern Australia, New Guinea, and Indonesia. They had the ability to survive for up to an hour on a single breath and can walk 100 feet across dry land. Sadly, as climate changes speed up, they kill the coral and seagrass these sharks feed on. But these sharks are also strong. They can survive with oxygen deprivation and in warm water, which might be something that helps to protect the species as climate change impacts their natural habitat. Lord Canavan. That previous entry was a little spooky, but we know what you're thinking. What about the people who allegedly lost their lives as a result of the curse of Tutankhamun? Arguably the most prominent of these was George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Canavan in northwest Wales, Great Britain. Also referred to as Lord Canavan, he passed away from blood poisoning. But was this related to Howard Carter's work in Egypt? Let's go over the gory details. He suffered a mosquito bite, not an unusual thing out in Egypt for sure. However, he then cut it open during a routine shave. Now, medical science would say he developed an infection and died, but others beg to differ. The Lord's death naturally made headlines, and no less a figure than Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, got people's imagination spinning with his speculations. The media already featured wild stories about a curse, yet Conan Doyle went a stage further by suggesting unearthly forces in the tomb area had caught up with Lord Canavan and killed him. The Lord's status as the person who funded the excavation of King Tut surely put him in a prime position for retribution from the ghosts of ancient Egypt. Lord Canavan was at the Continental Savoy Hotel in Cairo when he died in 1923. Narrative tension was heightened when a story went around that the lights went out in the city on his passing. Did this happen or not? We can't say it did with any certainty, so let's focus on some other details. The mosquito bite has been described as severe. A severe mossy bite? This must have been some bug that got him, right? Was the mosquito actually a messenger of doom from the ancient pharaoh himself? We're being a bit lighthearted, of course, but how serious is the idea that Lord Canavan died from a curse? Not very, according to experts. They point to the fact that he wasn't too well to begin with, bite or no bite. Also, he reportedly developed pneumonia, and that's what got him. We're thinking pneumonia may not have been a weapon of choice for the ancient Egyptians back in the day.
The sea monster of 1884. In 1884, a 5-year-old girl named Jessamine Buck got the surprise of a lifetime when she came face to face with a sea monster while visiting a beach. Even as an old woman, the memory of the terrifying creature stayed vivid in her mind. Back in '84, Jessamine had to travel 25 miles from her home in Bucksport to the beach in Pawleys Island, where she found the creature. Going to the beach was one of her favorite summertime activities. She had gone there with her older sister many times before, and her sister was with her the day of the discovery too. The two were looking at conch shells when suddenly Jessamine noticed something huge and terrifying in the waves just beyond the shore. It had a yellow head, it was covered in whiskers, and the little girl screamed and ran away. According to her, the creature looked like a giant yellow dog swimming in the water. After she told her mother what had happened, the adults got involved and went to check out the beach. They too were shocked when they witnessed the very same creature lurking in the water just off the shoreline. Nobody had any idea what it was, and they all ran off in fear. It wasn't until later, when they read the newspaper, that they learned a sea lion had escaped from a Baltimore zoo. Either they really did meet a monster that day in 1884, or they simply saw a sea lion and didn't know what it was. Either way, it goes to show how just about anything, especially to someone who doesn't know any better, can look like a sea monster.
BC severed feet. 5 years ago, 2 New Balance sneakers were found on Botanical Beach on Canada's Vancouver Island. But the real surprise came when a curious resident took a closer look and found the shoes had size 12 feet inside them. The mystery of severed feet washing up on BC beaches started in 2007, when a right foot washed up inside a sneaker on an island in the Strait of Georgia. At the time, a local coroner made it clear that none of the cases involved any violent activity. But that didn't stop local residents from feeling anxious about the bizarre discoveries. Over the next 11 years, more feet were found, and everyone had a theory about where they came from. Some thought they belonged to the unlucky victims of plane crashes or boat accidents. Others thought foul play was involved, but not even the BC Coroner's Service could figure out why the appendages were appearing on local beaches and why there were so many. Why do you think so many feet have washed the shore in the Strait of Georgia? Could it be a coincidence or something more sinister? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 2 shoes that washed up on Botanical Beach in February 2016 were later identified as coming from the same person. In another case in 2019, DNA testing from a missing person's family showed the foot matched their relative who disappeared in 2018. With so many feet washing ashore, investigators in Washington state had to set up a special portal where members of the public could go to positively identify human remains. The portal was exactly what some families needed, offering them closure. And the portal worked. After the launch, 13 mysteries surrounding severed feet were solved with the help of DNA testing, giving the public, who didn't feel safe visiting the area until answers about the influx of cases were provided, some much-needed sense of relief. Walter Brian Emory. The eerie excavation of Tutankhamun is rightly world-famous, and the thing everyone thinks of when you mention ancient Egyptian curses. But there are other scary stories where folk have died in what some might say are alarming circumstances. Take Brian Emory, for example. He was a British Egyptologist who passed away from a stroke in Cairo in 1971. What had happened in the run-up to this tragic event? He recently been involved in an excavation in the area of Saqqara, a village in Giza that you may be familiar with through its featuring in a Netflix series about the archaeology there. Anyway, back in the 1970s, Emory had found a small statue of Osiris, which he took back to his abode with him. If you don't know who Osiris is, then prepare yourself, because they're the god of death. Would you take a statue of a deathly figure and put it where you were going to sleep? It was reportedly a small statue, but even so, As an experienced Egyptologist, it seems Mr. Emory didn't heed such things and decided it should go along with him. He then became paralyzed down his right side, and his assistant discovered him in the bathroom. Emory was hospitalized, but sadly suffered another stroke a couple of days later. This one killed him. Terrible indeed, but apparently he loved Egypt and was buried there, so we're guessing that's what he would have wanted. Was it a sheer coincidence that his health failed not long after transporting the Osiris statue? It probably was, though the timing is bound to fuel speculation about vengeful forces coming to get people who interfere with the realm of the deceased.
Mexican blob beast. An unidentified monstrosity washed up on a tourist beach in Mexico and scared the pants, or should I say shorts, off everyone in attendance. So far, the experts have no idea what the strange creature was. It just kind of appeared out of nowhere on Bombfilled Beach in the city of Acapulco. Spectators gathered around and took photographs, sharing evidence of the bizarre animal on social media. The one thing all the experts agreed on was that the animal had not been dead for very long before it washed up on the beach. Yet, despite being recently dead, it seemed to be in an advanced state of decomposition. It looked like a blob, a pile of gunk roughly 12 feet in length. Even stranger is the fact that the carcass didn't seem to give off a bad smell. If it had been something like a rotting whale or shark, it definitely would have stank, and it would have been a very unforgettable stench. The mystery has still never been solved to this day. The best guesses saying the carcass belonged to a whale or a squid. But as we've come to learn, every unidentified sea monster that washes up is conveniently labeled as either a whale or a squid.
Mass jellyfish strandings. Climate change is having an impact on everything from water levels to crop failures. Even some of the smallest creatures on Earth are feeling the impact. A fact that became pretty clear when massive numbers of jellyfish started washing ashore in record numbers on the West Coast. Blame it on warmer winters, but a species known as by-the-wind sailor have been stranding themselves on beaches in jaw-dropping numbers, most noticeably after warmer winters. Using their stiff, translucent sails, the teacup-sized jellies push their appendages above the surface of the water and use it to catch zooplankton and larval fish as they travel. But their little sail also catches the ocean breeze, sending them sailing ashore and stranding them on beaches around the world. Citizen scientists observing the travel patterns of the jellies have collected the largest and longest dataset on mass strandings in the world, helping researchers at the University of Washington learn how and why they happen. In 2019, managers combed the Coastal Observation and Seabird Survey Team database to see if others had taken note of the by-the-wind sailor jellies, which are also known as Velella velella. In years that the winters were warmer, large strandings happened simultaneously from the northwest tip of Washington south to California's Mendocino coast. Researchers studied citizen science observations of by-the-wind sailors and discovered that the organisms wash ashore on West Coast beaches during the spring, when the winds shift and push the jellies to shore. The Velella jellies are able to grow in numbers during warmer winters, when the tides are calmer and less wavy. As the climate continues to struggle with rising temperatures, don't be surprised if your walk on the beach is coupled with a sighting of these brilliantly colored creatures. Hugh Evelyn White. Did you know that a lot of people involved with the excavation of Tutankhamun's tomb died following their work in Egypt? We're not talking of natural causes either. Over 20 died in total, making the case for a curse truly compelling. Is there sufficient evidence to claim this, or is the whole situation just a little overstated? Of course, explanations exist as to why these individuals passed away. We can't with any certainty state that these people were struck down by an alleged curse in one way or another. Yet when you look at a story such as that of Hugh Evelyn White, you have to wonder whether there's something in it. Let's take a big pinch of salt and look into the circumstances in which he died. He's been described as one of the first to enter the pharaoh's tomb in 1922. 2 years on and he was no more. Hold on, a couple of years? If it was a curse that got him, it was taking its sweet time. Well, what actually happened was that Evelyn White tragically took his own life, and some have drawn attention to the note he left, which read, "I've succumbed to a curse which forces me to disappear." This message was allegedly written in blood, though we won't become too lurid here, owing to the fact that a man has died and he should be shown respect. He died at his own hand by hanging in the city of Leeds in Yorkshire, England. Did he commit suicide because of the curse? And if so, how was it affecting him? Ultimately, we can't say, and experts have pointed to other details which may have resulted in his eventual demise. He'd reportedly suffered a major bereavement after a close friend of his passed away, a possible contributing factor to whatever his psychological state was at the time. Also, and rather interestingly, it isn't clear whether he was actually involved in the excavation itself, though he was definitely at the tomb. Those feeling terrible following their experience at Tut's tomb may have been affected by ancient fungi. These molds came as a result of foodstuffs left in the chamber, part of the whole business of keeping the pharaoh in tip-top shape for his journey to the next world. Some experts have pointed out that this might be a key element behind the sheer number of deaths. Evelyn White killed himself, so he doesn't fall into this category, especially if he didn't get up close and personal with the relics. That said, the idea of a curse grew in power due to the unfortunate circumstances that unfolded in the years following this momentous archaeological event.
The real-life Kraken. The Kraken is a real monster. It was spotted by humans as far back as the 1100s. King Sverre of Norway even wrote the details of his encounter with the Kraken while on a sea voyage. And while it's impossible to confirm a sighting made by a Viking king over 1,000 years ago, real Kraken-like monsters have been seen in modern times. What we know of today as the giant squid is almost identical to how seafarers have been describing the Kraken for centuries, leading researchers to say that the Kraken and the giant squid are one in the same. In 1954, a giant squid was found beached near Ranheim in Norway. At the time, Professor Sven Halfdorn measured the creature at over 31 feet in length. It was the biggest specimen ever recorded. Then, in 1873, a single tentacle was found that measured 19 feet, meaning the rest of the creature was even larger. The largest squid ever measured was just about 60 feet long. Over the past 2 centuries, barely any have washed ashore. The ones that have, scientists say they were just babies. This means the adults are comparable to descriptions of the Kraken, huge sea monsters with tentacles so long they could wrap around a boat. We just don't see them in modern times because, for one reason or another, they've gone into hiding. Do you believe in the Kraken? Let us know in the comments down below, and if you like this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already.
Israeli beach oil blobs. A heavy winter storm battered Israel's coastline in early 2021, and with it came toxic balls of tar that covered the shoreline that'll take years to completely remove. The oil spill off Israel's coast turned into tar balls because rough sea conditions broke up the slick and mixed it into the seawater for several days, congealing the tar into small blobs. Sadly, the event threatens both humans and animals, and it has already had a devastating effect on the environment. A 55-foot-long whale washed up dead on a beach in southern Israel, with its stomach completely filled with black liquid. Juvenile turtles also washed up on the shoreline, covered in black sludge. Marine animals are at risk from oil spills because they breathe and feed at the surface. Experts worry that the tar that has washed ashore is only a fraction of the toxic sludge still out there. A number of volunteers dispatched to the area to help with the cleanup had to be taken to the hospital after breathing in toxic fumes given off by the sludge. To make matters worse, the government failed to establish programs and funding to deal with oil spills in the last 2 decades. With no real plans to deal with the sticky situation when it began, it has become one of the most serious ecological disasters the country has ever seen. The government didn't really want anyone talking about it, and they issued a gag order on details about the oil spill, closing the entire length of Israel's 120-mile Mediterranean coastline to prevent members of the public from getting sick. With a new deal signed between the United Arab Emirates and Israel to build an oil pipeline in the area, experts warn this oil spill could be just the beginning of more trouble to come to the waters and the animals who live there. Return of the Relic. Away from the claustrophobic terror of Tutankhamun's tomb is another story connected to a fearsome curse. This one is more up to date, coming as it does from the 21st century, and a desire to right a wrong caused by the light-fingered and unwary. In 2004, an artifact described as a carving or fragment with hieroglyphs on it was taken from Egypt to Germany by someone who went on to suffer various afflictions. The man ultimately died from cancer, but before that felt paralyzed, nauseous, and feverish. Was this connected to the artifact, or was the individual simply in poor health? The man's stepson wasn't going to take any chances. He believed strongly enough that a curse had been placed on the family, so he brought the ancient item to the Egyptian embassy in Berlin, who then sent it home. Better safe than sorry, though it isn't definitive proof that a curse existed. Would certainly scare us silly, though, we have to say.
Toothy Creature, a creepy sea monster with terrifying teeth, washed up on a beach in Queensland, scaring the locals and baffling the entire internet. The discovery of the creature was made by a woman taking a leisurely stroll. She thought the monster looked like something out of a nightmare, so she took photographs of it and posted them on the local community Facebook page. People on the page identified it as either a flathead fish or an extremely poisonous stonefish. The creature had huge eyes bulging out the top of its head, with thin, very sharp teeth lining its mouth. It almost looked like it was smiling, like it had finished doing something it really shouldn't have. After quite a lot of speculation, the creature was identified as a stargazer, of which there are about 20 species in the waters around Australia. It's an incredibly venomous monster, known for burying itself in the sand and waiting to ambush smaller fish. It's lucky the woman didn't touch the stargazer, as just one prick from the spines on its back can be deadly. We all know someone that probably would have touched it.
Massive Moonfish. A 100-pound fish washed up on the shore of Sunset Beach in northern Oregon, dazzling staff from the nearby seaside aquarium with its stunning, glimmering, bright reddish-orange scales. The 3.5-foot-long moonfish, which is also called the opa, is the only fully warm-blooded fish alive today. They can grow to over 6 feet and weigh more than 600 pounds. The specimen washed up hundreds of miles from its normal habitat. They usually live in the open ocean, and they're rarely found as far north as Oregon. But warmer ocean temperatures mean the fish migrate north to keep cool. Aquarium staff and visitors got a rare treat and were able to study the specimen up close and personal. The fish has a unique flattened circular body, with occasional white dots and golden eyes. Even though they aren't usually targeted by fishermen, they're becoming more common and their meat is becoming more popular. Aquarium staff aren't sure if that means their populations are stable, so they decided to freeze the beached moonfish so it can be studied further in the hopes that by learning more about the fish and its habits, they can work to protect more of these stunning creatures from being captured. Richard Bethl. Captain the Honorable Richard Bethl held the post of Secretary to Howard Carter. When he died, he too was drawn into the web of conspiracy and the supernatural that had been weaved around the so-called curse of Tutankhamun. Bethl passed away at the Bath Club in Mayfair, London in 1929, some time after the tomb had been excavated, of course, though his connection to the dig made headlines. Mention was made of fire at his home, though this was in fact arson committed by Bethel's footmen. Still, it was easy for some to assume that dark forces were at play. Bethl died after reportedly being smothered in his bedroom at the club, possibly another reason for suspicion to be raised about the curse. Whatever happened, Bethl was gone, and his demise took a toll on his father, who was the 3rd Baron of Westbury. Westbury being a town and parish in Wiltshire, England. Baron Westbury committed suicide in 1930 by jumping from the 7th floor of his apartment building. He was reportedly ill and devastated by the loss of his son. However, stories emerged that he was subject to the curse associated with Richard. This has been debunked as tittle-tattle, with the man's suicide note describing his inner torment, but not saying anything to do with ancient Egypt.
Slimy and Deadly. A guy on TikTok almost died after filming himself licking one of the most dangerous sea monsters on the planet. It's extremely lucky that he walked away from that beach with his life. He goes by the name Alexa Reed, and he discovered the deadly creature while having a relaxing day at the beach. The thing was lying in the sand, wriggling a bit as it slowly died. Wanting to impress his online fans, this guy picked it up and then licked it. Why on earth he would pick some random sea creature up that he found on a beach and lick it is beyond me. He commented on the creature's light blue color and its yucky strands of tentacles. To him, it was just another boring old jellyfish. But again, why lick it? But to the people who watched this video and knew exactly what he was handling, it was the deadly Portuguese man-o-war, also sometimes called the floating terror. It has millions of stinging cells on its tentacles that it can use for killing fully grown humans. There are around 10,000 incidents in Australia every year from people getting stung by floating terrors, and although most of them aren't deadly encounters, as the stings are treatable if dealt with immediately, they do result in excruciating pain that lasts for at least 3 days, sometimes more. In the end, the TikToker threw the deadly creature away and continued on with his day, but he's lucky that he didn't end up spasming in the sand in unbelievable agony.
Massive basking shark. Fishermen in Maine were in for a shock when they came face to face with the second largest fish species on Earth one January day. After coming across the massive 26-foot-long male basking shark, the men immediately called authorities, who alerted the Maine Department of Marine Resources. After experts rushed to the scene, they identified the gargantuan specimen as a male basking shark, whose Latin name, Ceterinus maximus, means biggest-nosed marine monster. These massive sharks are usually found in the Mediterranean Sea, the north and south positions of both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, and the Sea of Japan. It also appears near New Zealand and off the southern coast of Australia. They often migrate thousands of miles in search of warm waters, but no one ever expected to see one wash the shore in Maine. Second in size only to the whale shark, which grows 60 feet, the basking shark isn't actually a danger to humans. They usually dine on zooplankton and other tiny marine invertebrates by filtering them through their gills. Their habit of feeding near the surface is what got them their name, because it looks like they're basking in the sun when they hunt for prey. They're also known for being able to jump up to 4 feet out of the water, so try not to get too close. The back portion of their bodies is usually dark brown, black, or blue, and their livers make up a whopping 25% of its entire body weight. But their big mouths with multiple rows of razor-sharp teeth are what get the most attention. They're able to open wide to a remarkable width of more than 3 feet. They were first discovered in the mid-18th century, making it the only surviving member of its family. Over time, numbers have dwindled, putting them on the list of threatened species, which makes the shark found in Maine a rare find. Titanic mummy theory. You'd think the story of the Titanic was straightforward. Tragic for sure, but also very much an earthly disaster. The ship accidentally rammed an iceberg, which sliced it open below the waterline. Cue panic, many deaths, and a movie by James Cameron. But did you know that an ancient Egyptian mummy may have had something to do with the terrible events that unfolded in 1912 out in the ocean? Part of the cargo on board the vessel was a wooden casket containing what was left of the Princess of Amun-Ra. Her death happened approximately a century and a half ago, and reports state that she was around before Jesus Christ. In the run up to the 20th century, this casket was purchased in Luxor when the area was being excavated. Who were the buyers? 4 wealthy young men who'd come all the way from England. It changed hands before winding up at the British Museum. It was moved there before an individual in America took interest. Trouble is, he had to get it across the Atlantic, and he needed a ship to travel on. Enter the ill-fated RMS Titanic. So maybe the mummy had a curse, and this resulted in the most famous maritime tragedy on record. Unlikely. In actual fact, the casket never went further than the British Museum. 2 imaginative English gentlemen named William Stead and Douglas Murray created a narrative of death and destruction around an object they saw at the museum. This was the lid of a casket connected to a figure known as the Princess of Amun. In addition to its fictional journey on board the Titanic, the supposedly cursed casket had other tales of misery attached to it, with whoever possessed it being at the mercy of a dark fate, leading to it changing hands frequently. All made up, of course. Why did Stead and Murray decide to spin this yarn? That's not entirely clear, though one thing was certain: this pair enjoyed causing a stir. There's one more twist in the tale that we need to tell you about. The Titanic part of the story wasn't entirely the author's doing. You see, William Stead was unlucky enough to be on the ship at the time, but he was on his way to a US peace conference in his capacity as a journalist. He did frighten passengers by talking about the mummy's curse, but the idea of a mummy actually being on board the vessel appears to have come later from other people, and media coverage confused the issue.
The sniper eel. In Southern California, on a beach in San Clemente, a miniature sea serpent washed up on the beach and freaked out some local divers. The monster was a sniper eel, a creature that lives anywhere from 1,000 to 13,000 feet beneath the surface of the water. These are literal sea serpents, able to grow to a maximum of 5 feet in length. This one was just a baby, about half the maximum size, but it was still freaky and disturbing. Although not technically a serpent, the sniper eel looks like a skinny underwater snake. It's a terrible predator that lives in the depths, alongside creatures like the anglerfish and other living monsters with bulbous eyes and sharp teeth. Nobody knows exactly how it floated from the dark recesses where it lived all the way to the California beach, but local experts said it was a very rare occurrence. Scientists don't even know that much about these creatures, other than some of their physical characteristics. One of the most jarring things is that the creature has hooked, backwards teeth that it uses for spearing shrimp.
Bombfilled New England Island. No Man's Land in Massachusetts is unusual for the heavily populated New England coast. It's brimming with spotted turtles and a myriad of migratory birds. It is a wildlife sanctuary with little human presence. But the thing that makes it strange is it's littered with countless undetonated bombs. The island is located about 3 miles from Martha's Vineyard, well known for being a playground to the rich and famous, including Oprah, Bill Gates, and the Kennedys. But even though it's just a stone's throw from the stomping grounds of so many millionaires and CEOs, the island was used as a US Navy bombing range from 1943 to 1996. Gus Ben David, a naturalist, biologist, and third-generation Martha's Vineyard resident, visited the island for the first time in 1973 when the local newspaper asked him to write a story on the state of the islands. After spending more time there than any other civilian, David says No Man's Land should be left alone and that any attempts to remove the unexploded weapons could jeopardize the habitat. An ecologist, U.S. Air Force veteran, and fishing guide named Brian McCarty, who's also familiar with the island, wants No Man's Land cleaned up and open to limited visitors. He's concerned that corroding munitions could pollute the soil and groundwater, and considering the only fresh water on Martha's Vineyard comes from the same water source located under the island, it's a pretty big concern. Another factor to consider is that the land once belonged to the Wampanoag tribe of Gay Head. The tribe wants greater and safer access to No Man's Land, both for cultural use and for general access by tribal members. Even though leaving the island to nature might seem like the best option, with so many differing opinions, no one's sure how or when everyone involved will come to a consensus on what should be done with this uninhabited wildlife refuge. Howard Carter. Now, of all the people who might have fallen prey to the curse of Tutankhamun, Howard Carter was surely at the top of the hit list. It was his name linked to the discovery of the pharaoh's tomb. His efforts working for Lord Canavan led us to knowing the details of the king's final resting place in the Valley of Kings. Numerous people who were either with him or associated with him appeared to be stricken by the curse. It may surprise you to learn that Carter didn't seem to be bothered by anything of a supernatural variety. In fact, he passed away at his home in London almost 2 decades later. Granted, he was terminally ill with Hodgkin lymphoma, but can that be put down to a vengeful pharaoh who waited years before finally snuffing him out? We're not so sure about that. There's definitely some interesting details associated with ancient Egyptian excavations that might give you pause for thought, and to wonder if these curses are real. Overall, it's probably a fantastic story that will never have an ending, making it more and more powerful as the years go by.
Nightmare of the Deep. A spooky fish washed up on a California beach, so monstrous that the people who found it couldn't even bear to look at it. The terrifying freak is called a Pacific football fish, a creature that looks oddly similar to the nightmare anglerfish in the movie Finding Nemo. And in fact, it is a species of anglerfish, one known for lurking in deep waters, at least 3,000 feet beneath the surface. According to the Crystal Cove State Park, where the ugly fish monster was found, to see any type of anglerfish washed up on a beach is very rare. They don't know how the creature ended up on shore, but they did give some interesting facts about it. Even though the football fish has teeth like sharpened fragments of glass, its mouth is so big that it sometimes doesn't even need to chew its prey. It can open its mouth and suck in prey larger than its own body.
Massive Megalodon. A Croatian man had a brush with the prehistoric when he found a tooth from a monster that roamed the earth millions of years ago. While searching for shells 37 miles from Zagreb, Stepan Susek found a giant tooth in a Croatian river, believed to be that of a megalodon shark. The creature lived 16 to 2.6 million years ago during the Neogene period in the Cenozoic era and swam in oceans and seas around the world, including the former Pannonian Sea where the fossil was discovered. They reached the maximum length of 60 feet, making them one of the biggest predators of the time. Fossils discovered over time hint that giant predatory sharks evolved earlier than thought. The Megalodon prowled seas 100 million years ago and was known to be as tall as a two-story building. Their teeth were triangular and measured almost 8 inches in diagonal length. The specimen, believed to be Leptostyrex macrorhiza, measured 20 feet long and had 3 vertebrae, each measuring almost 5 inches in diameter. Other similar specimens have been unearthed in Texas and Kansas. Experts still aren't sure how such a powerful predator died out when the water was teeming with large enough fish, marine reptiles, and even small pliosaurs to support their big appetites. The discovery of teeth from the Meg found all over the world could be the last piece of the puzzle that'll help to figure out what happened to this massive predator of the deep.
A rundown whale. The biggest and most incredible sea monsters that really do live in our oceans are definitely whales. And one of them was just found on a beach in San Diego. The whale, which was dead upon its discovery, is believed to have been hit by an Australian Navy ship. The huge corpse of the 58-foot behemoth washed up on Bolsa Chica State Beach. According to the beach spokesman, Kevin Purcell, an investigation was launched and the US Navy actually came to see the whale themselves. It's believed that the whale was one of 2 endangered fin whales that was struck by the Australian Navy destroyer, the HMAS Sydney, just before it docked in San Diego. The 2 whales had needed to be dislodged from the hull of the vessel. One of them, apparently, made its way to the local beach. What's really horrifying is that even though whaling is no longer a big threat to fin whales, getting run over by boats still is. This really makes you wonder, what's the real sea monster? Is it the beasts living in the ocean, or the human monsters sailing it? What's the most frightening monster you've ever heard of being found on a beach? Let us know about it in the comments, and thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe for all the best content from the channel. See you next time. Bye!